What's up, reality students? Thank you for watching online youth group. I hope you guys are doing well, staying safe, and not too bored with the whole every crazy thing that's going on right now. My name is Jake. I'm one of the youth pastors here at Reality Church. This week, we're on week, I believe, 4 of our series, Upstream, where we're looking at the life of Paul. We're going to hear from our high school pastor, Jordy, in just a second with that message. But before we do that, guys, I know that a lot of you are bummed out that Summer Fusion is canceled and that we're not going to be able to go to CIY. But hang tight, guys. We are working on some stuff that can maybe make that pain a little bit less for you. So just stay tuned. We got some announcements coming in a week or two here for you guys about that. Also, our summer schedule should be out relatively soon. So just keep an eye out on that stuff. Hopefully this whole pandemic thing will be over soon and we can start having some fun and getting into summer. So with that, guys, let's see what Jordy has for us today.
What's up, Rally students? I'm so excited about this week of a series that we're calling Upstream, and we're getting close to the end of the school year, and we're starting to wrap up even this series. And in this week, we are going to be talking about Paul and his arrest. Now, this entire series, we've been talking about Paul and his life and how Jesus changed him and how he grew from that and he radically was changed. And so we are talking about his arrest actually today and what led up to it and kind of what came from it. Now, if I were to ask you the question, if you were to get arrested, what would it be for? Some of you are like, I don't want to tell you, Jordy, and that's fine. I have been asked that question, and I had to think about it because the only thing that I really do illegally, and I think there's a lot of you that do this as well, is speed. I will be honest, I speed sometimes, all right? And that's illegal. You're not supposed to speed. But that's literally the only thing I could think of. And so when I'm thinking of, man, what would I do if I got arrested, what would it be for? And as I've thought about this, it would probably be because I did something that was focused on adrenaline. I love adrenaline. I love to jump off things. I love to, if I see something, I'm like, I got to do that, right? And so the other day, we were actually watching a YouTube video, and it's this YouTuber, his name's Devin Supertramp, and go check out his videos. It's super cool stuff. Well, one of them was they went to New Zealand, and they were bungee jumping off into a ravine, like a really clear ravine, and it was awesome. Like their head would go into the water, and they'd come back up, super neat. And then they were on this top of the hill, and they were swinging into a canyon. So people would be harnessed, of course, and then they would be pushed off, and they would swing through this canyon, and it super adrenaline rush, right? And so I looked at that video and I was like, I got to do it. Where my family's sitting there with me watching this video, and they're like, I would never do that. And I think the one thing that I would probably get arrested for is doing something like that I wasn't supposed to. When I was back in high school, we went on this super long hike with our youth group in Minnesota, and we were there for a few things, and we were going up this almost mountain, and we come across this nice, beautiful waterfall, and it goes into this pool of water, probably 30 feet deep, and I was like, I got to jump off that. Well, there's a sign that said, no swimming, no jumping off the waterfall, and I was so tempted to do it, but I had too many witnesses, so I couldn't. But those are the kind of things that I think I would probably get arrested for because I love that kind of stuff, and there's some things I couldn't do because they're illegal to do, like jumping off a waterfall. Or certain waterfall. I live the life where if I see something that's adrenaline driven, I want to do it. Even if it means I'm going to get hurt, I want to do it. So I asked the question, what if we lived our life no matter what the consequences were? What if we were to live our life with always having purpose? Always having a reason? No matter what people do to us, no matter how people view us, how much they judge us, what if we lived our life with no regrets? And I'm not saying I'm going to go do something stupid. I'm not talking that regret. I'm talking the regret, living your life with no regrets because you look back and say, I did something that changed lives and I did something with purpose. In high school, there's band I listened to, and they came out with this song. I think I was a sophomore, maybe a junior. And they came out with this song where the main line to it, the main chorus was, "I'd rather die for what I believe than live a life without meaning." And that always stuck with me. That one lyric always stuck with me because I thought, man, I would rather die for living for Jesus than living without any meaning, any purpose. And that one stuck to me. And when I look at Paul's life, I instantly think of that line, that line would be the line for his life. Paul, he did just that. He lived where if he were to die because of it, he would look back and say, I died with purpose. And so if we jump into Acts 21, that's where we're going to be. Acts 21, 26 through 36, we're going to talk about how Paul gets arrested, why he gets arrested, and what comes from it. Now, if we're starting at 26, it says, "So Paul went to the temple the next day with the other men. They had already started the purification ritual, so he publicly announced the date when their vows would end and sacrifices would be offered for each of them. The 7 days were almost ended when some of the Jews from the province of Asia saw Paul in the temple and roused a mob against him. They grabbed him, yelling, 'Men of Israel, help us. This is the man who preaches against our people everywhere and tells them to disobey the Jewish laws. He speaks against the temple and even defiles the holy place by bringing in Gentiles. For earlier that day, they had seen him in the city with Trophimus,'" that's a name, "a Gentile from Ephesus, and they assumed Paul had taken him into the temple. The whole city was rocked by these accusations, and a great riot followed. Paul was grabbed and dragged into the temple, or out of the temple, and immediately the gates were closed behind him. As they were trying to kill him, word reached the commander of the Roman regiment that all of Jerusalem was in an uproar. He immediately called," I completely just flipped onto a page that I wasn't supposed to, "all of his soldiers and officers and ran down among the crowd. When the mob saw the commander and the troops coming, they stopped beating Paul. When the commander arrested him and ordered bound with chains, he asked the crowd, who was he and what has he done? Some shouted one thing, some another. Since he couldn't find out the truth, in all the uproar and confusion, he ordered Paul to be taken to the fortress. As Paul reached the stairs, the mob grew so violent that the soldiers had to lift him to their shoulders to protect him, and the crowd followed behind, shouting, 'Kill him, kill him.'" So we have all of these people. This riot, this mob starts. They start beating Paul. They grab him, and like the army has to jump into this situation. But the thing is that Paul didn't allow anything to stop him. He didn't allow anything to trip up his purpose, his mission, right? Even getting arrested because there's a mob trying to kill him, he didn't let it stop him. The gospel was the number one thing pushing Paul forward and pushing him into a life where he looks back and says, "I'm living my life for Jesus." And so nothing could stop that. No arrest, no mob, not the entire city coming at him and accusing him of something. You know, the Jews were very upset with him because he started kind of switching into, "I'm following Jesus" instead of "I'm following the law." And so all of these Jews look at him saying, you are wrecking our rituals and our traditions because of what you're doing. And Paul was focused on Gentiles, right? And so he's focused on the Gentiles and saying, I need to go to the Gentiles to say, to preach the gospel to them. But nothing could ever stop him. And one thing I noticed in this is that he didn't cave when they started mugging him, right? Like he actually, like he didn't like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not going to talk about that," or "I won't do that," when that mob comes and the whole riot begins and all of Jerusalem is accusing him. He doesn't cave into I'm not going to do this, or I'm now feared. He says, all right, arrest me then. I know what I'm doing is right, and I know what I'm doing is following Jesus. And so I guess you're going to have to arrest me. And he didn't say, oh, you got to arrest me, right? As we've seen people do before. He was like, I'm not gonna change because this riot and this mob is coming after me and everybody wants to kill me. Guys, we should live our lives in a way that represents what we believe. And I think Paul does that. I actually think that Paul lives this life where he gets arrested, he is judged, he's hated on, he is eventually killed, right? He all these things happen to Paul, whereas he's doing exactly what Jesus did. He's following Jesus the best he possibly can. And that's why we're taking a deep dive into Paul's life, because he's a great example of a human that is following Jesus the best that he possibly could. We respond to what drives us, right? And the gospel should be what drives us. So therefore, our response should be pushing the gospel forward no matter what is going to happen. But how do we live that, right? And a few things is be willing. Be willing to do whatever it takes to advance the gospel. I think Paul did this because Paul went to people that needed to hear the gospel, right? So he went to people who were his neighbors. He went to people who were in a whole nother country than him. He went to anybody who needed to hear the gospel. So are you willing to do whatever God wants you to do when it comes to sharing the gospel? Are you willing to go on a mission trip? Are you willing to go to that friend that needs to hear about Jesus? Are you willing to stand up for what you believe in? And that kind of leads me into my next one, is be courageous, not stupid, right? Because we can all be stupid at times. I can be stupid at times. But courage is, I think, something different than being stupid. There's a difference there, because courage is standing up for what you believe. So standing up for the gospel in a way of, this might hurt me, but I'm going to stand up and do it. Now, being stupid is like, I'm just going to go do it because I want to do something stupid. Don't go do something stupid. Courage is speaking the gospel to somebody who needs to hear it, right? And so I think that's what Paul, I think that was Paul's purpose and his meaning in life, was that he was always going to make sure that Jesus was known by the people around him, and he would go to them if he needed to. And so something else is find your why, right? We're constantly told to find our why. And ask yourself, am I living a way that I should be living? What is my purpose? What is my reason? And I think there's something actually that we can kind of tweak here is normally people seek their purpose, right? They seek their purpose and they think, oh, I finally found my purpose. Well, I believe that we don't actually find our purpose until we realize that our purpose should line up with God's purpose. And that's something I think we need to really examine in ourselves, is is our purpose in life, the meaning of our life, does it line up with God's purpose and what he wants to do in us? Because I think we can go find our own purposes and go walk a line of what we think is purpose in and for our life. But once we get to God's purpose for our life, that's where everything changes. So live a life that represents what you believe. What will happen if you're constantly pushing the gospel forward and looking around and saying, you know what, I'm not going to regret this. I'm not going to regret this when I die someday. I'm not going to regret this when I look back and think, wow, I did something for the kingdom. And that is the same mentality that Paul had. Paul said, you know what? Whatever happens to me, I don't care. I'm going to get arrested. Okay. He was arrested, and he was writing the books that we read in the Bible, some of them, those letters, to some of those churches. So he was still advancing the gospel in jail. That's pretty incredible. Nothing could stop Paul. So what if we lived a life that represented what we believe. Let's pray. Father, thank you for today. Thank you for who you are. And this crazy COVID-19 thing, God, I know that good things are coming out of this. I know that you are at work, and we ask that you help us trust you. Because we look around and we see so many things that we could view as negative, but God, give us the positives. We want to know the positives. We want to know how you're working. We want to know how you can use us. So God, we ask that you, as the school year comes to an end, as we're wrapping up and we're getting ready for the summer, I ask that you move in every single one of us, that you do something in us that we can never do ourselves. God, we love you. In Jesus' name, amen.